Good evening. My name is JP De Oliveira. You're on the channel The Wandering Clinician, and I'm here tonight with my friend Dianna Marcketta, and we're going to be talking about autism. We're also going to be talking about a movie that's coming out on the 21st of February, and Dianna has more information about that. And we had a conversation around the movie, and I want to have the conversation again live when we had a conversation in private. So the movie is called The Unbreakable Boy. It's coming out on 21st of February 2025, and Dianna, you know the person who wrote the screenplay and the book in which this is based?
Yeah,
Okay. Can you tell me more about it? What is the movie about?
sure. So, first of all, I'm Dianna Marcketta, and I am host of the Soul Fam podcast. We explore consciousness and spirituality and like to push the envelope of our current understanding of reality. The Unbreakable Boy is a true story written by my friend Scott Lorette about his family's struggle with autism, alcoholism, depression, and just really trying to surf through this crazy life as unscathed as possible. The two of the family members also have what is kind of there's another name for it, another medical name, but I'm going to call it brittle bone disease.
Mm-hmm.
And the book is really about his own experience and having to come to terms with his own truth, while his son, who is autistic, Austin, loves every bit of life, and it's just a joy and a true heart to be around. And my girlfriend Teresa Lorette, his wife, is also a very faith affirmed woman who shares very openly her struggles in really trying to mother and parent this family and be a great wife, as well as their other son, Logan, not to be dismissed, who was a teacher and is now becoming a police officer. So it's really their story, and in a way, it's really all of our stories.
You know, I went on IMDb and I looked up the poster of the movie, and I saw the cast, and I love the cast. Zach Levy plays the father, and then Megan Fahey, who was in The White Lotus and also on The Bold Type. And I just saw her in a movie called Your Monster on Max. She's always great, no matter what role she plays. She's a delight. She's fun to watch. She was also in a mini series on Netflix. I tend to not be a fan of people, but I enjoy every time I see her name, added to the cast of any shows. I always tend to want to watch because she's fun to watch and she's a good actor. And Zach Levy, I remember him from Sesame Street, believe it or not, because my son used to
Oh,
watch
that's
Sesame
funny.
Street, and
Remember
he
Zach
was
from Sesame
Zach
Street?
Levy from Sesame Street, and he was also there was a TV show called Chuck, I think, and that was with him and Ivan Strahovski, and I think he also played a superhero Shazam.
Yeah.
That so those they've been around the block, they have careers, they are known, and I was really interested to. I'm interested to watch this movie. And I don't like going to the movies, but I'm going to make an exception for that one because I feel like the story is really interesting. There's been so much talk in the past 20 years about autism, but I'm thinking prior 1990, there was almost no talk about autism. So I was like curious. And so I went to look up at statistics to try to find out. It used to be one person out of 2,600 would be diagnosed with autism. And now it's one out of 168 people on Earth have autism, or at least in the US. So the rate of autism has increased, and people don't even know what's causing it. There are different thoughts. They think about environment because there are some zone pockets where autism is more prevalent than other places. But autism has become a very hot subject, a very important subject. People talk about it more now than ever. And neurodivergent and neurotypical. If I 20 years ago would talk about autism and neurodivergence, people would have looked at what are you talking about? And today, because of TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, CNN, what have you, people now have a better understanding of what's going on. They have more information. Some of it is right on point, but sometimes it's a little bit, it lags. There's not a whole lot of knowledge. But the conversation I had with you about the movie was, you told me about how Teresa was diagnosed with brittle bone disease, and then she went and had children. And somebody might look at her and go, "Why would you have children when you know you have a percent chance of transmitting that disease to your offspring?" And we were talking about it, and one of the thoughts that went to my head is that, first of all, a child is a miracle, regardless if he's born with a disease or not. It's a miracle to have a child, to be a parent. And I'm thinking that I don't know, I was not in the bedroom with Scott and Teresa when they decided to have their children, but I'm thinking that everybody wants to have kids, and maybe they thought about adopting, or even they thought about not even have children. And sometimes children show up when you don't expect them. So they just happen. I feel like one thing that people have to have when they go see this movie is to have a lot of compassion for their story, because first of all, to get naked emotionally in front of a crowd, it's really hard to speak about your personal life and to speak about what's going on with your life. That's very difficult. And I think that it is unfair to somebody opens up and it's kind of somebody talking to you in confidence and they tell you what's going on with their life. And then you start judging them. You start telling them that their story, you would not have done it like this, you would have done it like that. And so the conversation we had was more about, I wish that people, when they go see this movie, they will really have a heart of compassion and love and understanding. And they will be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she went through this. And instead of judging her for the fact that she's a mother.
That's very interesting thing to say. I think everyone will experience the movie as they experience it, and there's many points of interest in this particular movie. I mentioned Teresa because she's not one to be in the limelight. And I think as mothers, especially mothers of autistic children, or ADHD children, or neurodivergent children, or children who are on the spectrum, it's a bit of a battle on a daily basis. Austin was a gift from God who decided to show up. Um, I'll let you see the movie, and that will explain how.
I'm sure it's a gift from God or whatever. I'm sure he is.
Right. However, it wasn't necessary anyway. As couples do, sometimes children appear before you say your vows. So, anywho, the point being that I think you won't have much of a choice but to open up your heart in seeing this movie. It's very powerful. It's very moving. I think that we can all relate to it in one form or another. And again, it's a movie. It's not a documentary. It's not, a chronology of their lives. It's a movie. It's a bit different than actually reading the book or talking with these people in person, but I don't think you're going to be disappointed, and hopefully the movie in general opens up our hearts to being more compassionate about whatever it is, whether it's alcoholism or trauma or depression or just the balance of life, juggling all of that, and that there really is a divine design behind all of this. But I personally think you're going to feel expanded by this movie, and it's out. Lionsgate and Kingdom Story are the producers and distributors of it. John Gunn is actually the director and screenwriter of the movie. Scott was heavily involved in it, and it's taken almost 12 years for this story to finally hit the screen. So it's not just that, it's that there was perseverance in sharing the story.
Resilience.
Resilience, for sure.
You know, my dad's little sister, make a side note, my dad's little sister in the 70s, late 70s, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And if you're aware of data on pancreatic cancer, it's a cancer that generally they basically tell you get your affairs in order because you're not going to be here very much longer. It's a cancer that's very aggressive, and she was stage 3, almost stage 4. And at the time, I've got my uncle Francis and my aunt Clarissa, and they were living in Toronto. And she was diagnosed with that cancer, and she had already 3 boys, and she had a daughter, but she also had a brand new baby girl that was just born, and she had Down syndrome. And my aunt was in the early 40s when she had my cousin Anna, and then she was diagnosed within a year or two from the birth of my cousin with pancreatic cancer. So my aunt at the time was thinking, what am I going to do? I have a child with Down syndrome, and now I'm going to die. And it was like horrible. It was like the worst, because she thought already she was having a lot of anxiety around being the mother of a Down syndrome kid, and then she was going to die. So anyhow, she was given not very many months to live, and she was supposed to be dead in 79 or 1980. I can remember, it was a while back. Well, my aunt ended up beating that cancer and living until 2002. She lived until 2002, when she died in 2002. But I will say one thing that has been in the back of my head, and maybe that's wishful thinking on my part, but I think my cousin, even though she was born with Down syndrome, saved the life of my aunt, because she fought for her life, but she also fought for the right to be there for her daughter and to be there and take care of her. And I thought of that Anna was pretty much the reason why my Aunt Clarissa lived to be the age that she was. She died still young. She died in her early 60s, but she did live way longer than the doctor who had diagnosed her with cancer. As a matter of fact, the doctor who diagnosed her with cancer died before she did. At the end of the day, you're like telling people they're going to die and then they outlive you. So what I'm trying to say is that, maybe sometimes you look at you get pregnant or you have a child and the child is born with brittle bone disease and is born with autism or develops autism. And people might think, wow, this is kind of a challenge. This is so difficult, and people don't realize that maybe Austin came to be the salvation of Scott and Teresa. Maybe he came into their life to help them transcend whatever was going on in their life. And maybe he was the answer to their prayer, and maybe he was an angel in disguise. Maybe he was actually what allowed them to survive this life, because nobody gets out of life, but at least the reason why they're still here and kicking and doing well is maybe because they had a reason to fight and a purpose to live. And I think that's why we should not look at people and judge them for whatever decision they make, because each person's path is their own and we shouldn't be judging it. That's the point I was trying to make.
Sure. It would be a peaceful, a much more heavenly sort of place if we lacked some judgment. But I hope everybody loves the movie. It opens up a conversation about a lot of different kinds of things. Autism and neurodivergence in general is something we talk about a lot on the Soul Fam podcast. I am not, of course, sure what the exact causes of it is, or if it's that there's not necessarily an increase, but that there's an increase in the awareness.
Or diagnosis?
And I also have a podcast myself coming out this week that interviews the director, writer, and producer of a movie called Open Door. John Barnhart, who's a director, writer, producer, created a documentary about Temple Grandin, who is well known at Colorado State University. She did not speak until she was 7 years old. She has a very dynamic mind. She just wrote a book recently called Visual Thinking and published it rather. And as Temple says, we have to have all kinds of different minds, because that mind may solve this problem and somebody else's mind may solve that problem, or this person's mind may open up a conversation about something else. And perhaps even just the judgment of labeling somebody autistic or ADHD or ADD or neurodivergent, I actually think that's good at this point, just to raise awareness, but there may be something even more expansive to understand about these minds. Is it that they were caused by vaccines? That's one thought. I have a feeling related to it, may be related to trauma, but it's perhaps most important to just understand that we all see the world from a different perspective, no matter what your label might be.
Well, I watched the movie made for TV with Claire Danes. It was made on HBO a few years back. I think she won an Emmy for it. It's brilliant. That movie is brilliant. That made for television movie is brilliant. If you've never watched it, go on HBO, watch it. If you have
Temple
a Max,
Grandin, yes.
It's an amazing. I remember stumbling onto it by accident, and I was totally taken by it. And you watch something and then it stays with you for a while. And this is the kind of story that stayed with me for a while, because it was so interesting to see her development, the arch from the beginning of where she was and where she ended up as, and the thinking that she had and the way she thought. Growing up in Europe and being bullied like I was when I was a kid, and the fact that I was different, I would walk into a room and it doesn't matter if the room had 100 people, 200 people, 300 people, people could feel something about me was different and they would pick on me or they would give me a hard time. And so for the longest time, I thought something was wrong with me, because I thought if other people don't like me or if other people feel that something is odd about me, maybe I am the problem. And then seeing stories like Temple Grandin stories on HBO, or watching The Unbreakable Boy, knowing that this movie is going to come out and knowing that there's a movie being made about somebody with autism, or finding out about stories of people with ADHD or people who have neurodiversity, is very affirming in many ways, because it allows you to see yourself. There's nothing better than to see yourself on television and see someone who is somewhat like you and say, I understand, I relate to this.
Right.
I can understand where they're coming from, what's going on. And then the other thing which I thought which is very, very good, is education. the more people get exposed to someone diagnosis, whether it's through the Good Doctor or whether they watch Temple Grandin or whether they watch the Unbreakable Boy, they get to experience and see someone and humanize. It humanizes a person because when you refer to somebody as an autistic person or ADHD person, it's very dehumanizing. You see that first the trouble with them instead of seeing who they are as a person. And, a lot of time people who have who are neurodiverse, they mask. They have to mask in society. They have to pretend. They have to wear a mask on their face. They have to pretend that they understand what's going on, even though sometimes they don't. Or they have to shut down their feelings and not let other people's actions affect them so much that they emote for their feelings so they don't get picked on. And so I've seen that happen time and time again. Sometimes it's because people don't emote at all. People think, oh my God, he's a weirdo. He doesn't even feel things. He doesn't. And sometimes people will crack a joke, and somebody who has autism or somebody who is more literal will not be able to pick up on the joke, and then they become aggressive and they get upset because they don't understand. They know something is off. I remember watching Grey's Anatomy, and there was an episode with the lady that was in Dance with the Wolf, Mary McDonnell, I think, or
Sure.
And she played a doctor, and she was a cardiologist, and she's in the elevator, and she's talking, and she has Asperger. And she's talking to someone about something that happened, and she said something that stayed with me. She said, I may have Asperger and I may have autism, but I am more honest in many ways. I'm more authentic than to the person she was talking to. I can't remember the dialogue exactly. It was many years ago. But she was basically saying, when you see me, you see who I am. I am me. I'm not something that I'm pretending to be. And she was talking to someone. She goes, you were not the person she was talking to. She felt kind of patronized or put down, or she felt like she was the butt of a joke. And she basically said, you're not being yourself, but I am being myself. So, and that stayed with me. The reason why people get to sometimes attack people and make them feel bad is because they see someone for who they are and they pick on them for who they are. But meanwhile, they don't realize that what's driving them to pick on someone for who they are is their own fear, their own vulnerability, and they hide that. The biggest bully oftentimes are very vulnerable. They don't want to show that. So your friend, Teresa, she's the mother of 2 boys. Austin, how old is Austin now?
30.
30 years old. Okay.
You'll see him in the movie as a young boy, and then as a teenager. So, and how he's accepted at his school, how he's sort of rallied around actually at his school. But that's a learning curve. There's a learning curve to that, which will be shared in the movie as well. So it's kind of a cool thing, I've got to say.
Is Logan a younger brother or is he an older brother?
So think about that. Logan is a younger brother. So so he's sort of the perfect son. They're actually both perfect. They're just different.
Well, is the more what would be the best version? Is what when you have a kid and that meets all your expectations in many ways. That doesn't challenge you, or that's just goes. Maybe that's what you're referring to. And when you have a kid that's like my son Gino has ADHD, who kind of challenges me on every front and is a little bit oppositional defiant. I see other people's kids who are like super easygoing, and I see my kid who's amazing. I love my son, but sometimes it's like, why can't you just do what I ask you to do? Why do you have to always give me? Why do you have to always talk back at me or ask me, draw you a map or show you the big meaning out of things? Or my son is so cool. He asks questions sometimes that I don't even know that anybody has the answer to those questions, but he's asking himself big questions like about life, about God, about the universe, about stars, about the ocean, about fishes, about dogs, about cats, about people, about everything. And sometimes, when you've had a long day and when I'm dealing with him and I'm asking him to clean his room and he's looking at me and he's asking me the greater meaning of what I'm asking him, where he's trying to make it more existential. It's like, does it really matter if I clean my room today? Because tomorrow my room will be messy again. So should I really be cleaning my room? Because if I clean my room, aren't I just delaying the fact that tomorrow it will be messy? And he's 9 years old, right? So I'm like, and then I'm like, just do what I ask. And I turn into one of those parents who's like, do what I ask. Stop, debating. So I think the perfect child is like when you go to a birthday party and you see all the kids running around hyped up on sugar. But my son arrived at the party already hyped up on sugar, even though he has had no sugar. No sugar. So I know what you mean.
One lick of sugar.
You give him sugar, it's like he's even more hyper. Where do they live, Scott and Teresa?
Oh, they live in Omaha, Nebraska. So they live in Omaha, Nebraska
Nebraska.
now.
Wow. Is that where you grew up?
But
Nebraska?
no, in Iowa. So we grew up together in Iowa. Scott and I did. So
And
we're
then,
from the same hometown.
but you went to Nebraska to school, right? That's where you went
Yeah,
to
I went to
college?
University of Nebraska in Lincoln.
All right. I
Not
always knew.
related to this conversation at all.
I know, but I'm just trying to, I'm trying to put all the knowledge that I have about you and your education and where you've been and what you've done, because Nebraska and Iowa are pretty close.
Yeah, they're right next door to each other. Good, wholesome Midwestern
Yeah, I love,
states and people.
I love the U.S. You go from east to west. The east, the states are smaller, and as you get to the west, they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
True,
So I think
true.
it's interesting.
Well, they didn't know what when they were founding this country. Speaking
I,
of this country, I know you wanted to talk about sort of the state of the world at the moment.
yeah, I did. I think it's always fun to discuss. Fun. It's kind of a. I'm trying to use a word that would be good. Yeah, it's always interesting. It's always fun to discuss about what's happening, and I'm trying to make sense of everything that's happening. This week was a very busy week, and even though I try not to watch the news, I was made aware of the news by a lot of people, and there were two plane crashes and a lot of orders. There were like a lot of executive orders being coming out of the White House. They were cranking them out like they were going out of style. And one thing that I'm having a really hard time with the news because rather than having straight news reporting, we get a lot of editorializing nowadays. So you don't get just straight news, you get a lot of
Censorship.
people. Yes, absolutely.
Let's just call it that.
Yeah, censorship. And a lot of people, they try to influence the masses through their judgment, or they leave half the news. They will say one thing, they won't talk about the rest. And based on what political ideology they have, or where they come from, or what they believe in, you're going to get a very slanted. Three people could be reporting the same thing, but you'll get three different point of view but you don't know what's factual and what's just their opinion.
Right. I think you have to do your own reporting, your own journalism at this point, and determine what's best for you. As a person who has a background in journalism and spent a few years in journalism, I think you have to ask your own questions and come to your own decisions. Really, that's what journalism is all about. It's the fifth estate, and I think it will have a resurgence at some point, but this year is going to be very tough. So I think it's uh, because we have access to so much social media and other information. Really, you can be your own journalist at this point. That's not really what we want to do, but you can ask your own questions. You probably won't get the answers that you want from mainstream media, not at the moment, but it's a good time to be asking a lot of questions. That's all I have to say.
Well, where do you go to get your answers?
Where do I?
Yeah, where
Where
do
do
you
I
go?
personally go get my answers? I have an
Yes.
entirely different perspective on what's happening in the world. So how I perceive what's happening is very different from most people. So I see things from a very spiritual and conscious sort of situation. I also see it from a very sort of galactic and more universal perspective. So there's a purpose behind everything, good, bad, or ugly. Good, bad, or indifferent. And this obviously is going to be a year to hold on to your hats, and it's going to be a challenging year no matter what part of the planet you're on. And I'm in what feels like Mad Max in California at the moment because I'm in a disaster area at the moment. And even now, 3 weeks after the first fire, we're still breathing in particles and dirty air, and many of us are coming down with respiratory infections and various kinds of strange strep, all sorts of stuff. I'm sure the animals are going to get it too. There's so much toxicity, whether you can see it with your own eyes or not. There's an enormous amount of toxicity in the air. And this is one place on the planet. So there's just an enormous amount of transformation going on now, and trying to make sense of it is probably not really bit by bit an easy task to do. The overall perspective is that we're really shifting, from my point of view, into a new earth. And there's sort of a split. You're either going to stay how things were and, that's it, or you're going to move into a different space of love and divinity and all sorts of things that will change the way and shape the way we live, breathe, eat, and continue on this planet.
Do
But
you? Yes, go on. Go
go
on.
ahead. No, go
No,
ahead.
I
There's a lot
was
happening at the moment for us to be distracted about. So it's inherently important that you remain in your faith or remain in your heart. And I'm absolutely sure you're going to be protected.
Thanks. And what I was thinking about also is the fact that I've seen a change in the way people interact with one another, especially since
Mm,
the advent of technology. I feel
mhm.
that I miss the time where you could go out on the street and meet people and connect with people. I feel that
Yeah.
I think it's easier for me to connect with older folks because they are not as embedded into technology. And I feel like younger people tend to sometimes not see what's right in front of them because they are distracted by their phone or by their media or whatever. And I think that that's contributing to the disconnect in society where we aren't able to really connect in a way that's more organic. And sometimes, and I'm even thinking about some of my clients that are looking for love and they feel that they can't meet people next door, but then they'll go on an app and they'll meet people 5,000 miles away. I feel like, I don't know if technology is really helping us. I think in some cases it is, but I think in many cases it's disconnecting us from one another. And
Mhm.
talking about the news, when I go online and I try to, the rare times that I go look for information, I get bombarded. I mean, with the news, you get, first of all, you get commercials trying to sell you stuff. And then you get slanted. The algorithm will try to determine where you stand politically and try to give you news that is slanted to your political opinion. But to get, we're far away from Walter Cronkite reading the news, from a chair at night, giving us that was a
Yeah,
bit boring, but
maybe.
it was,
Are we? I don't know. I mean,
we are.
if we do a little history, do a little digging, were they really reporting the news? I don't know. There's a whole other discussion about it.
They were
Perhaps
telling
the
us what they
media.
felt we needed to know,
Sure.
which is
So,
probably, but now we're more aware of it.
right. There's a good chance that maybe the media was being controlled then as well. It just was different at that time.
So when
Now
do
we're
we
much
ever
more
get the
aware.
news? When do we ever get the news? Psychologically
Where
speaking,
you
I'm
get
thinking
the
about,
news?
no, but the real, I'm
News?
not saying the real news, but yeah, we get the fake news, but how do we get ever the news that is not heavily
Filtered,
slanted?
censored.
Yes,
Not
yes.
right now. I don't think that's
I
happening.
don't think we are.
So, but you can ask a lot of questions and you can determine your own answers. Use your critical thinking hat if you care to. A lot of people don't care to.
My biggest fear is to come across as a weirdo because I've always been so different and because and so
Different
sometime
is
I'll
good.
find, yeah, different is good, but not always until people want to cancel you or treat you weird. But like I'll find some information and I will mention it, and then there will be like different people online that are fact checkers or they are, and then when you go and check the fact checkers, you realize the fact checkers themselves are embedded in the process. Like some fact checkers actually are responding to another group. So a lot of time they will, if you challenge something that goes against the fact checkers, power that be friends or whatever, you're gonna get, oh, this is not the truth, this is a lie, blah blah blah. So the people, the average person that I run into, I'll be like, oh, I saw that written about such and such person. Oh no, that was debunked. Fact checkers have said it was not the truth, so therefore it must not be the truth because fact checkers know best, right? And I'm like, but what about the fact that those fact checkers are embedded with the person that they are debunking the news being about? Oh no, that's just another false news, falsehood, and people are lying. So I end up like not wanting to talk to people because I get, I find information and then it's, you're referring to such and such study. That study was debunked. That's debunked. This is debunked. Everything has been debunked. Everything you're thinking is not right. And then 6 months later, you find out that all the things you were thinking were actually true, and those people debunking those studies were. I'm going to give you something as simple as red dye. Was like the 90s. No, but the 90s they came out with a study that said red dye could cause cancer, would be responsible for cancer, and some people went on national television and did the Jenny Jones, Sally Jesse Raphael, Maury Povich, all those people, and they were like, "Oh, red dye causes cancer. Red dye causes cancer." Even Oprah Winfrey. And people are like, oh no, conspiracy theory, that's all a lie, that's all a lie. And then 6 months ago to a year ago, I can't remember when, the FDA is like, oh, red dye causes cancer. And I'm like, they known about it all along. They knew about it all along, but people that were talking about it were treated as if they were high or something was wrong with them. And so all those people that were like debunking it, say, it's not the truth, you're like conspiracy theorists. Now are like, oh, well, my bad, I made a mistake. Same thing with chemtrails. So we're talking about chemtrails in the 2000 and the end of the 90s, beginning of 2000. I remember going on Facebook around 2008, 2009, and having long heated argument with people on Facebook about chemtrails. And some one lady I remember, I will never forget, she was so annoying. She was like, those are contrails, not chemtrails, blah, 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 blah. 2 years ago, chemtrails are real. Chemtrails are the real thing. And so you're like, do I have to wait for the conspiracy theory to not be viewed as a conspiracy theory, to talk about it? Do I have to, because, I feel like as soon as you coin someone a conspiracy theorist, you essentially attack the character without really addressing the argument they're making. Like, if you say something to me and I don't like what you're saying to me, I just go, conspiracy theorist, and automatically this veil is put on you, and then whatever comes out of your mouth is treated as if it's bullshit, excuse me for my English. And then you no longer look at the validity of what's being said, you just look at the character of the person. So you attack the character of the person saying it, so that way you can, if you demolish them, you can demolish the argument they're making. And I think that's the danger. And we're talking about news. I feel that when you watch the news from New York or Los Angeles or Chicago or Dallas, and you watch different newscasters in different regions, in different groups, in different cities, different population, making announcements that seemed unrehearsed, and then you realize they are all speaking the same word with the same tone, with the same cadence, at the same spiel. They were talking about Operation Mockingbird, I think that's what it's called. And I saw this video on YouTube. YouTube is a great place to go find videos like that sometimes. And they were showing one person saying it, and two people saying it, and then three people saying it. And before you know it, you had they zoom out, and you got 100 journalists all saying the same thing at the same time, moment in time in the United States. But it sounds as if it's coming from them, but it's like a mass message being thrown at the American public. And I think that was, to me, the craziest thing. So I feel that the biggest danger of falsehood and bad information and misreporting and conspiracy theory and all that is that people now are starting to doubt themselves and doubt each other. So it's creating lots of issues around trust. When people don't trust anything or anyone, it makes them afraid. And when people are afraid, they are, when you're in a time of crisis or when you're afraid, you don't think as well as when you're cool, calm, and collected.
There's nothing wrong with distrusting. There's nothing wrong with distrusting things that are on the exterior. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's fear. You can question and confirm for yourself. You can question and affirm for yourself. There is the sense of intuition and instinct that humans are inherently containers of. So I feel like the more you trust yourself rather than trust something that's on the exterior, no matter what that is, you're probably in a stronger position. There's an enormous amount of distrust going on out here, and there should be. So,
you mean in Los Angeles?
Yeah, there should be. You should be questioning things. You don't have to just take things for face value. I'm sure people around the Potomac River aren't taking things at face value right now.
The people in Flint, Michigan are not taking things.
Sure. So there's not necessarily something wrong with not trusting. But if
we're bathing in it. We're bathing in it. That's not just a bit of distrust. Is the very fabric of our society is constantly being, it's like you have a sweater and it's knitted and you're like unraveling it and you're just pulling at it. But it feels like everything that you might have taken for granted that gave you a sense of safety now is being taken away at once. And so I'm talking about distrusting. You will not find someone more distrustful. I'll trust up to a point, and then I'll be like, hey, give me some proof. But which is fine. But now I feel like everything, it's everything that it can create an environment of fear. Not everyone is like you and I, and we'll go and look for answers, or we'll sit down and reflect upon what's going on. Some people are just going to be really impacted. I think the level of anxiety is at an all-time high, and I feel that the news, the media is contributing to it. And sometimes I think the gloom and doom is being, you watch the news, and I've mentioned that before, the news, they tell you some of the most popular shows right now on television is how you're going to die. What kind of calamity is going to kill you? And when you're not watching those, there are shows about serial killers. Your next door neighbor could be a Jeffrey Dahmer. So you need to watch. Stay tuned, and we'll tell you what can kill you around your house. Which room you're more likely to die or have an accident in. And so that creates a lot of, I don't know if ignorance is bliss, but I feel that education is good, but I feel like there's something as too much education or sometimes I feel like some scenarios are it's over the top. There's a lot of anticipatory anxiety being created.
So it's a time of change. There's a huge transformation going on, and you're going to have to trust it. You're going to have to trust that it's going to be all right. It's not going to be easy, but this is sort of part of the plan. And if anybody listens to my podcast, we've been saying this for a while.
Yeah, I love
And
your podcast.
we're in the purification period where the earth is, and this is science as well as spirituality and consciousness, but we're in a huge transformation right now. So yes, the fabric of society is going to be broken apart because it's not working. It's not working for you. It's not working for many facets of society, culture, economics, the environment, the planet at large. Maybe it's not even working on a more galactic level. So even though if you're not aware of it, the things have to shift for our survival, for our ability to thrive, for our ability to continue in a positive way. And there is perhaps or has been a loss of our own sense of empowerment. This is an opportunity to become empowered as individuals rather than to meet the cattle call.
You know, I've noticed, maybe I'm getting older and that might be the reason, but I've noticed a lot of people have died lately. I've around
Right.
me,
That's part of the
and
plan.
yeah, and it's kind of it's overwhelming me the sheer number of people who have died in such different ways. Cancers, they get diagnosed with cancer in July, they are dead by December. They have strokes, they go to bed, they don't wake up, they have heart attacks, and young people too, and it's overwhelming.
Sure, it's absolutely overwhelming. There's going to be a lot of sadness. There's going to be a lot of questioning. There's going to be a lot of there's a grieving of what was, whether it's that someone you knew growing up suddenly dies, or an animal suddenly dies, or that is just sort of part of, and it's easy to sort of say that from a broader perspective, but I've certainly have experienced both in the last few days. So it can give you a sense of understanding. There's a vibrational aspect that beings are not able to maintain at this time. And that's not going to sit right with everybody. But not everyone is meant to go on. Not everyone is meant to be in the new earth. Not everybody wants to. It's a lot easier on the other side. It's beautiful in heaven. So, and it's, and you're going to have to kind of gird your loins in this next year and be a bit of a warrior internally and externally. Not suggesting anybody take up arms, just saying that you're going to have to pull in your strength and integrity.
Why do you think, if you had someone in front of you, somebody that you want to give them an advice on how to deal with the world right now, what would you say to them? I mean, you've said a lot already, but what would you add to it? Would you say have faith, stay hopeful? What would be one good self-care tip
I
that you
think
could
you
give
need to
someone?
love yourself. I think you need to love yourself and love each other and give generously of your heart.
Okay, loving oneself,
But I
give from
think
the heart.
self-love, I really believe that. I feel like loving ourselves is probably the best survival skill to have right now.
You know, and I don't mean to be the devil's advocate, but I feel like, as a matter of fact, I agree with you 100%. I think that loving oneself is very important, but I think some people have lost or have never known how to love themselves
Sure, I
because
agree
because
wholeheartedly.
of because newspapers, medias, Facebook, whatever, there's constant need to appear to be successful and beautiful and young, and so the people feel like they have to meet. A lot of time when I deal with is people come to me and they say, when I'm thin, I will be happy. I'm like, what's keeping you from being happy right now? And they'll be like, I'm not thin right now. And I feel like instead of really setting a goal of being happy, they're setting a limitation to their happiness. They're blocking themselves from achieving what they need to achieve. And so when you have a goal for yourself and you use that goal as a contingency to feeling good, you're essentially delaying your happiness. You're saying, right now I can be happy, but one day I will be as long as I do this, and this. And I feel that the big secret is telling people you don't have to wait to be famous or wealthy or beautiful or young to be happy. You can be happy right now.
You don't have to wait to love yourself.
No, don't postpone it and don't push your life away.
It'll probably make things happen faster.
How do you convince somebody who doesn't know, who has never seen it or has never experienced it? How do you get someone who does not love themselves to love themselves? How
Well,
do you, when you,
many of us don't. I mean, many of us struggle with that.
yeah, but
So
if somebody says I hate me and you tell them, but I love you and I love what I see, they're gonna be like, how can you love me when I don't like me?
it's a lot of healing, a lot of unearthing, a lot of tearing back the onion, layers after layers, a lot about doing the work of just self appreciation and self love and self healing. And as you love yourself, you will love others, truthfully.
I love my job because I get to talk to people all day long, and a lot of them are really adorable and sweet and kind. And
Oh, I'm sure.
some people have great personalities. Sometimes I'll run into somebody that's a bit trying, but most, I would say 99.9% of the time, the people, I really like them. And I had a client once whom I said, I really care about you. And he says, no, I pay you for you to care about me. And I'm like, no, you pay me for me to provide therapy to you. But whether or not I care about you, that comes for free. That's something that I do feel in my heart. No can do. He would not take it. He was like, no, you don't care about me. You're only doing this because it's a job. You don't care about me. And that's his opinion. He has entitled to have it. But at the end of the day, I feel that if you don't believe truly that people can care about you, that makes sense if you don't care about yourself, because you're like, if I don't care about me, why should you care about me?
Self love is a habit. It just is. It's not we don't necessarily grow up loving ourselves because we look for a lot of external validation. And I think it's a daily struggle. It's a daily diet of self love. So and self acceptance and lack of and lack of judgment of oneself. So not that you should have discipline or, you know, understand there are consequences to actions, things like that. But it's sort of radical self love, radical self acceptance. And no matter what's going on, I mean, like I'm bad at math. So, okay. There's lots of other people who can do the math for me. Yeah,
Or
I don't
maybe
know.
you never had a good teacher, or the teachers didn't make you like it, or
Or maybe I
whatever.
didn't understand that math has meaning. So, anyway, Robert Edward Grant, that's why you're here. Just understand that math has meaning. Anyhow, uh, that is it's a big task for all of us, but I think it's a worthwhile task. I think it makes the world a lot more heavenly.
Oh, I'm bad at small talk.
Of course you are.
Uh, every talk I have has to be profound, deep, life changing,
That's
moving.
right.
If you talk to me about, I don't know, what you ate for breakfast, I'm going to pass out. I'm going to be like, or
Sure. You're
I
you're
hate
also
going,
on the spectrum, dear.
I
So
am.
So there's a lack of patience with that. However, it's a great little icebreaker, and people just need to feel appreciated and heard, even if it's like, "Hey, I had eggs for breakfast." I don't know. Uh,
But I don't fake interest. I cannot fake interest. I cannot pretend that I care about something I don't care about.
but
So
they
it's
care
really,
about it.
yeah, but I care about them caring about it, but I don't care about what they're talking about. Get what I'm saying? I sound like Dr. Seuss.
I
But the point is,
understand.
it's
You
like,
can say something positive. That sounds yummy.
oh,
That
and
sounds
then
great.
it's
I
all,
hope you enjoyed that. I'm
or
sure that was wonderful for you.
probably what come out of my mouth is like, my God, you have like really expensive taste. Eggs are so expensive right now.
They're
That's probably
crazy expensive, but that's a whole other conversation.
like, it's like eating caviar for breakfast. My goodness. No, I mean, everything I say in many ways, maybe that's selfish on my part, has to interest me. Because if I talk to someone and what they're saying is not interesting to me, I'll listen to them for a couple of minutes, but then I will like find my way out of the conversation. I will be like, oh, gotta go.
So is that a lack of self-love on your part, JP, that you have an impatience with yourself and appreciating the small things of life? Or is
No,
that
no, no. I love myself. That's why I'm getting myself out of the conversation because I want to save my brain from frying itself. It's more like, you go to a party
maybe it
and you meet,
opens up maybe it opens up to something bigger because it's easy to start with eggs.
maybe. Or maybe you go to a party and all people can ever talk about is what they've eaten and what they're going to eat and what they're eating right now. And after a while, you're like, okay, enough already.
Well, that's another discussion.
Yeah. Some people never have, some people don't want to talk about things. That's really interesting to me? Politics, sex, and religion. And in America, you're like, don't talk about politics, sex, and religion. So if I talk about the Pope, it's like talking about politics, sex, and religion all at once. If I talk about politicians, all that come up. So you're supposed to really make small talk. And sometimes people will talk about stuff that I find interesting, which is not trending or not not over the top. Somebody talks to me about music or arts. That's interesting to me. Or literature. That's interesting to me. I think I don't have a problem with people telling me even about their job or their neighbors or whatever, up to a point. But I think like when they're teaching me something that I don't know about, I love it. I'm curious. I want to know more. When I get really tired, and this is like the Warner inclination talking about problem, but like when I get really tired is when people become redundant, and when they talk about stuff that has already been said like 100 times, and because literally I get paid to listen to people on a daily basis. I guess when I'm not getting paid, I'm like, okay, get to the point, land that plane, have that baby already.
All right. So this is where we have to be more accepting and loving of one another.
Go ahead,
I'm
talk
gonna
to me
have to
about your
jump.
eggs. I'm gonna have to go as well. This is the end of our recording, but Dianna, I can't wait to talk to you again and see you again. You're always like one of my favorite people. You're like so intelligent, so smart, so beautiful, blah blah blah. But all that is true, and I will check out. When is the next episode of Soul Femme podcast
It'll be
coming out?
coming out this coming week with John Barnhart of Open Door, who's film director, producer, writer of The Open Door, featuring Temple Grandin from Colorado State University, who's done immense work in the advancing welfare of livestock, and also in understanding that our minds work differently. Be sure to see The Unbreakable Boy in the theaters when it hits February 21st. I think you'll enjoy it. I hope you enjoy it and find something in it that feels relevant to you, and that we all walk out of there with more
Can I take my
joyous heart.
9-year-old? Can I take my 9-year-old son to go see that
Absolutely,
movie?
please take the kids. This is a faith affirmed family movie. Please take the entire family.
So this
Take
is
the
a great.
neighborhood.
Take everybody, like, stop talking about your eggs. Let's go to the movies. The
Yeah,
point is,
it's worth it. It's a good movie. It's a real movie about real people.
okay. Well, that's great because you know what?
Not
There's not enough of those stories. There's not
Yeah.
enough stories about people that you meet every day, and I would love to talk to Teresa and Scott and get to know them. They sound like amazing people, and as I said, the cast is pretty amazing. So if you don't know Megan Fahey and Zach Levy, get to know them
Zach
because they are like Levi. Forgive me, Zach.
Zach's tremendous in this, and so is
Yeah,
Megan.
he's a good actor. He's a good actor, even though I can't pronounce his name to save my life. Zach
Your
Levi,
neighbor.
Megan Fahey. Well, I would say Levy. Yeah, he's my
All right.
neighbor. He lives in Texas.
Yep.
I did not know that. I thought he was from
Yep.
Louisiana.
No, he's actually from Ventura, California, and he lives in the Austin area.
Keep Austin weird. We love Austin. So I will see you soon. I wish you a good evening. And
Thank
for
you. Thank you for
correcting.
making me a guest on this. I appreciate it. Thank you for being the highlight of my day, and always good to talk with you.
Well, you're the highlight of my day, and you're the highlight of my evening as well. So that works.
All
Have a
right.
good day. Bye bye.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir.